Well, good morning and welcome to Wednesday. I'm Dan Alstrand in again for Todd this morning. Hope you're having a fantastic day. And I know, like me, watched the news on TV last night and saw the latest escalation in violence in the Middle East. Now, missiles flying over Israel, Israeli troops crossing the border into Lebanon and attacking the West Bank, another raid in Gaza. No matter what side of the conflict that you fall on, politics and idealism aside, violence like this never solves anything. I'm sure we can all agree that it would serve everyone's best interest involved if we all took a step back, put down the guns and the bombs and the rockets. The loss of life over the last year over on that side of the world on both sides of this conflict is heartbreaking, and it needs to stop before we push things to a point of no return if we haven't already done that already. That was what my thoughts were watching the video last night of the latest stuff happening over there. Violence doesn't ever solve anything. Anyway, on more happier news, did you watch the vice presidential debate last night? It was kind of a different tack than the presidential debates that we've seen thus far. Not sure if last night's event swayed many voters. Not sure if any debate sways voters these days. Maybe our first guest might disagree with me on that. But I think that most watching last night for fireworks and faux pas, I think you left disappointed. And in the news this morning, you heard on with Blake and with Steve this morning, then pallet shelters that have been built over the last year. The province bought 200 of these things. And to date, only 80 have been put up. And the latest numbers that I've seen is that there are 530 some odd shelter beds in Nova Scotia, 1,287 people on the list as being homeless in our province. The math doesn't work, does it? Anyway, it might be something you want to talk about on the open hour. Thanks to Vanessa Veinotte on the other side of the glass, who always does a fantastic job keeping things in line here. It is Wednesday, so that means house calls with Dr. John Gillis will take over the second hour. If you have a question that the good doctor can answer, get ready. And we'll open the lines after 11 o'clock and welcome Dr. John to the show. Wednesday also means midweek meltdown. Then hour 3, we'll turn the floor over to you for a full hour of open lines. And as you know, I look forward to that segment each and every day. But before we get to that, we are continuing our look at what's going on with this municipal election. That's just not that far away anymore. We're into October. It's on the 19th. And we've been welcoming candidates into the studio that have put their names on the list and signed the documents and paid the money and did all of that stuff. And we're going to continue to do that today. We're very pleased to welcome into the studio, who's very excited about being in the studio, and that is Laura Cousin, running in District 9 for that's Halifax West, Armdale. Laura, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dan. Happy to be here.
I guess the first question, and I've been asking all of the candidates that have come into the studio or joined me on the phone, is why did you decide that now is the time for you to take that big step and throw your hat into the ring?
Thanks for asking. I've been a community advocate for many years, and I'd really like to amplify people's voices and do it on a bigger platform.
You've been on the campaign trail for some time now, and that usually involves going out and talking to people and knocking on doors and doing all the things that politicians should be doing. What are you hearing on the doorsteps? What are people telling you?
People are ready for a change. They don't feel represented. They don't feel their voices are being heard. And I'd like to change that.
What are the big issues? What's everybody talking about? Is it the big 3, the big 4?
Yes, definitely homelessness and affordable housing is at the forefront. However, since September, I do have to say that traffic has been impacted in a major way and impacting people's quality of life. So those would be the 2 front runners.
And it's weird, and I can speak to this because I've been enjoying the traffic, so to speak. With everybody getting back to work in September, it just seems like a switch got flipped when school went back. And District 9 obviously takes the brunt of that traffic coming from like the 103 and the 102 and over the bridges because the Armdale or the Winter Street Exchange is there and Bears Road. What's your thoughts on traffic and what can we do to fix that?
It's a serious issue, and District 9 is at the center of this, as you mentioned. I speak to folks who are taking public transportation, and a 9-minute bus ride is turning into 55 minutes to work, and people are losing time with their families. It's disrespecting citizens' time, really, at the end of the day. And if you're on a bus and you're stuck in the same traffic as a car, where's the incentive to use public transportation?
Fair point.
Right. So we need to sort of think big and long term. I know there are a lot of smaller Band-Aid solutions we can put together at this time, but we need to look at the city as a whole. And because if people are coming through District 9, it's affecting the boundaries outside of District 9, right? And I think that a lot of people have great ideas, but I do like the idea of seeing rapid transit solutions such as a light rail in their future. And I think that would alleviate things would have a big impact on our entire city and especially on the people of District 9 who are critically affected by this.
Been here for almost 13 years now, and light rail has been talked about since before I came here. And the biggest pushback that I hear, and I imagine you hear too, is that it's extremely expensive to do that. How do you sell light rail to a taxpayer that already feels like they're overburdened by property tax?
Oh, that's a great question. Listen, I think people are paying the price right now with time. We know that cars idling in traffic release more emissions, so it's affecting our environment, it's affecting our wallets, it's affecting our time to sit in traffic. If we can find a solution for everybody and get to the root of this issue, we're not a small town anymore. We're turning into a big city and we keep growing. We need to look at how this situation is going to look 2 years from now. Is it going to get any better? We can't be reacting to problems. We need to be proactive and work upstream. Let's get to the root of the issue.
But still, and a light rail system doesn't happen in 2 years, right? It's a long-term project, but and has been talked about for a very long time, and that's sort of where it's kind of sits because of our geography and our small streets and those kind of things. A very expensive proposition.
Absolutely. I'm not saying I'm an expert in this field, but let's bring in experts. Let's bring in people who have experience with this and evaluate our city and see what we can go do moving forward to ensure we don't become gridlocked. If we have one emergency in our city with the traffic that we have, it could be extremely dangerous. We need solutions.
It doesn't take much to mess things up. One accident on a bridge and it's Hunger Games out there.
Yes, it's scary and challenging for everyone. You
mentioned Halifax is no longer a small town and is turning into a big city, and with big city comes big city problems. Drop my pen. And the biggest problem I think that's facing our city right now is the housing and homelessness issue. Reading your website, your number one campaign platform is the homelessness issue. How do we fix this problem and get away from these, as you mentioned before, these Band-Aid solutions?
Right. I think that we can learn from the successes of other cities. We've seen other cities in Canada come together and sort of build a recipe of ingredients being all the different voices we need at the table. We need people from street navigators to addiction services to people working in shelters with the province, the city, and the federal government, all at the same table, devising a plan. We need to know people who are actually on the ground, seeing what's really happening, come together, and I think we could build a really great team and build this recipe for success. That
could be an uphill battle with the last council, all sitting in here chatting with Todd and with me, have said that the relationship between HRM and the provincial government, who's responsible for housing in the province, has been strained at best. How do we repair that relationship?
Yes, it's a really tough issue. I know this brings up a lot of pain points for a lot of individuals. There are a lot of smart people on council, and I'm sure they've put together a lot of ideas, but I do believe that when you go in with the intention of resolution instead of argument, we can find things that we can agree on together. And I think that if you go in with that attitude and that intention, we can work together and find solutions. This is a very concerning and important situation for us right now. And as mentioned earlier, as we grow, this will get worse if we do not get ahead of it.
Do you agree with the solutions that the city has come up with thus far with the shelter spaces, working with the province on that, and the way that we're managing the homeless encampments?
I think that we are missing pieces to that plan. I think that we need to add pieces that are more sort of wraparound services, such as I mentioned earlier, addiction services, mental health services. They're very lacking in that plan. It's important to get a roof over someone's head because they can't, if they're focused on survival, they can't begin to help themselves with their challenges that they're facing, such as addiction and mental health. So we need to get those services in place so that we can actually help these individuals and help them get on their feet and become autonomous.
Lara, there's a proposal right smack center in the District 9 area on Strawberry Hill for a pretty massive development. What's your thoughts on the redevelopment of Strawberry Hill and putting thousands of units into that location?
Right. That's actually just outside the border of Strawberry Hill.
I stand corrected.
However, it will impact traffic.
Every day.
Every day. So what I'd like to see, and when I speak in terms of thoughtful development, is, okay, do we have enough schools to maintain a community there? Are they including green spaces in the development? Are our services enough? Do we need to redo sewage systems, for instance, that kind of thing? How will this impact the traffic on a bigger level? Do we have buses going there? I'd like to see a plan where we see all of these things included. And that's where meaningful public consultation comes in. And that's something I'm hearing at the doorsteps. The residents of District 9 do not feel consulted or communicated with or heard when it comes to planning these developments. And they have a lot of amazing insight being residents of the community. They want to respect the livability of a community. And they do agree that the densification needs to happen. So how do we include everybody in the conversation and make sure that their ideas are heard?
How do we? How do we include people in the conversation? Do you commit, if elected as councillor, to hold regular public meetings or to have stronger public consultation when developments like Strawberry Hill, I know it's not in the district, but when development proposals come before council, I hear it every time there's one, I hear we're not consulted enough. So do you commit, if elected councillor, to do that, to have meetings on it?
100%. We need adequate communication to ensure that everyone affected and impacted by a decision will be communicated with and included in the meeting. And we need to communicate with these stakeholders sooner in the decision making, at an earlier point, before the plan has already been hatched out. Let's bring them in sooner.
You have a website. That's where we get more information on what you're doing and your platform and all that stuff. What is it?
Housing.
Yep.
And the homeless. Traffic.
Yep.
And infrastructure.
Mm-hmm. Communication. Which we just talked about.
Meaningful public consultation and thoughtful spending. So are these funds being allocated where they need to be? Are they overpaying for things? As a business owner, I own 3 businesses. If I don't balance my books, I'm out of business. I think the city needs to operate in the same way, and that's really important to me.
If we want to find out more about you, Lara, where do we do it? What's the website?
LaraForCouncil.ca, Lara for Council on Instagram, Lara for Council on Facebook.
It all sounds the same. It's all good.
Easy peasy.
Lara, I appreciate your time today, and good luck in the upcoming election, which is just a few days away.
Yes, October 8th. You can vote online.
Okay. Looking forward to it. Lara Casson is here, and we thank her very much for her time. Need to stop down for our first break here on the Todd Veinotte Show this morning. I'm Dan Olstrand. We're back in minutes. Welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Olstrand. Hope you're having a fantastic day. The province's natural, this is in the Saltwire website, the province's Natural Resources Department and Acadia University are now using satellite collars as they work to get a better idea of the health, movement, and needs of our province's black bear population. The information collected will improve the department's ability to manage a sustainable population. The Director of Wildlife for the Department of Natural Resources and Renewables is Andrew Boyne, and he joins us on the phone this morning. Andrew, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm well. I guess the first question is why have we decided that we needed to do this study? Is the data that we've have old, or is this just better data?
No, I think it's probably the latter. I think this is better data. I mean, we've been managing bears in the province for many decades, but I think we've come to a point now where we've recognized that, particularly with technology and with an expanding population, moving further and further into the hinterland, that it's time for us to understand bears a little bit better in the province.
How do the collars work? What do they collect?
So, I mean, these are satellite collars, so it's almost like the GPS in your car, but it allows us to track the movement of bears, and these particular collars will hopefully last 3 to 4 years. So we should get a fair amount of data and help us understand seasonal movements of bears, how much time they're spending, in natural habitats versus sort of human-based habitats, when they're going into hibernation, hopefully give us a bit more insight into food. So, I mean, it's going to be quite fascinating what we learn. And I think one thing for sure is that when you put a satellite collar on any kind of animal, you learn things you never expected. So it'll be exciting to see what comes of this.
Andrew, how do you put the collar? Bears are just not going to walk up and put a collar on it. Do you trap them? How does that work?
Yeah, we do. We use bait to attract them to traps. The province has a number of bear traps just that we use for dealing with nuisance bears if we ever have to trap a bear to relocate it. And then once we have them trapped, we immobilize them and then put a collar around their neck, which superficially looks like a light brown belt about 2 or 3 inches wide that goes around their collar, around their neck.
How long do they last forever? Are you tracking that animal for life? How does that work?
Yeah, so the collar should last 3 to 4 years if they stay on, and at that point, once they get to the point where the batteries are starting to die, we would make an effort to recapture the animals and take those collars off.
How is the bear population doing, Andrew? I know we saw recently a young bear in Dartmouth. How is the population in the province doing? Is it thriving? Is it shrinking? What's it doing?
Yeah, I mean, part of the reason for this kind of research is that we don't really have an understanding of exactly how many bears there are in the province, but there are certainly indications that suggest the bear population is quite healthy. We get information from the fall bear hunting season that suggests that the number of bears that are being taken in a year has remained quite high, and then we rely on reports from the public on sightings of bears that have been sort of generally increasing for the last little while. So we don't have the definitive data behind it, but everything that we do have that certainly supports the idea that we have a healthy bear population in the province. Andrew,
how many bears are you going to collar?
So our objectives right now for this fall is to put collars on 6 animals. Then in the spring, when they come out of hibernation, we have another 5 collars that we hope to put on there for a total of 11. And then we're exploring now whether we'll go beyond that. It'll probably depend on how we do with putting these 11 collars on, but the current objective is 11.
And that's, I'm assuming, going to be spread all over the province, including Cape Breton?
Yeah, no, interestingly enough, right now we're focused on Halifax County, and that's partly because with 11 collars, we don't want to disperse them too broadly in the province. We won't really have enough sort of replicated data from one area to help us make decisions. So we're starting with Halifax County, which is the county where we have sort of the most human interactions. And then as we expand the project, the idea would be to move further afield and work elsewhere in the province.
This satellite study, this collar study, is working in conjunction with another program that DNR is asking hunters and those in the woods to take part in.
Yeah, exactly. We're actually working with the hunting community, and frankly, any Nova Scotian who's willing to go out in the woods and collect bear scat, collect bear poop for us. One of the big questions that we have is exactly what bears are eating and how important are human food sources. Because inevitably, when we get reports of a bear interacting with people in a neighborhood or in a farmer's field, it's because there is a human-based food source there. So to determine what the bears are eating, we're trying to collect bear scat from across the province to get an understanding of that. So if people are interested in helping with that regard, you don't mind picking up some bear poop in the woods, if you go to our website, you can find the list of our regional offices, and they have containers and data sheets that people can use to collect that for us.
What kind of, and this might be a wild question, but what kind of food does a bear eat out in the woods? They're vegetarians, are they not?
Well, I mean, I think we would call them omnivores, meaning that they're not picky. They'll eat berries, roots, insects. They'll certainly prey on young deer and moose. But they're not picky. I mean, a bear's objective is to eat as much food as it possibly can in anticipation of having to survive the winter without eating. So they're not picky. So, I mean, that's why when we have trouble with bears, it's inevitably because they found themselves a nice, easy food source that might be someone's green bin or a compost pile or some other poorly managed human food source.
If somebody wants to take part in that survey, Andrew, how do we do it? Do we just reach out to DNR?
To take part in the scat
survey
collection?
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you go to our offices, and you can go to our website and find a list of them, if you show up at one of our natural resource offices, we have containers and data sheets there that the public can pick up and use to go collect.
Andrew, I know that hunters want me to ask this next question. Once you get this kind of data started and you get a good idea of what the population are doing, will this factor into a decision to reinstate the spring bear hunt?
Well, we've never had a spring bear hunt in Nova Scotia, so the proposal that went forward in the spring was to initiate something in Nova Scotia that hasn't been here before. You know, one of the things that we're hoping to do with the research that we're conducting is having a better understanding of the bear population across the province. Right now, if you hunt deer or hunt moose, although our moose hunt is currently in suspension, but those two species are managed by zones. For bear right now, in the fall season, hunters can take one bear anywhere in the province. And that's because we don't really have a great understanding of where in the province there are high densities of bears or low densities of bears. And so we're hoping that we'll be able to get better information. It'll help us manage the population in general to help us deal with vehicle collisions, nuisance bear situations, but also help us manage hunting and harvesting in the province as well.
When are we expected to see some results from this survey? I imagine immediately once you put the collars on, right?
Yeah, right now we only have a single collar on. So the next couple of months we hope to get 5 more on. So we're already getting information on a single bear, and the data comes in almost in real time and with multiple points per day. So it's quite fascinating. And so with the one bear we do have collared, you're already starting to see some sort of general patterns of this individual where it was spending time in the spring is different than where it's been spending time in the summer. And, we'll soon find out when it goes into a den for the winter. So we'll start getting information immediately. The overall study will take a little bit of time to get enough data to to identify meaningful trends and that kind of thing. But certainly by next year, we'll have 11 collars out and be collecting a fair amount of data.
Andrew, you mentioned that hunting can happen across the province in the fall for bears. Is it against the law to shoot a bear with a collar?
It's not against the law, but I'm glad you asked that question because we were very much encouraging the hunters if they should see a bear with a collar, and sometimes the collars are hard to see, but they should have a colorful ear tag. If hunters see that, we're definitely asking them not to shoot the bear. It's not illegal, but it's in the best interest of hunters not to shoot that bear because that's going to provide us with information to help us manage a sustainable population. So hopefully hunters will recognize that.
Andrew, I appreciate your time. Have a good one.
Thank you so much. I appreciate talking to you.
That is Andrew Boyne. He is the Director of Wildlife for the Department of Natural Resources and Renewables here in Nova Scotia. It's be fascinating to just follow the movements, right? Because we don't see them often. We really don't. Because if you remember back, was it 2 weeks ago when that young bear was in Dartmouth Common in the tree? Everybody was a flutter about this bear. So we don't see them in the urban area often. It's not fluke or it's not a uncommon thing to happen, but it doesn't happen every day. So I would be fascinated just to see where they go and how it works and everything else, and more data is good because then we learn more about the populations in the province of Nova Scotia. We need to stop down, take a break. When we come back, a shot in the arm for the cafeteria at Dartmouth General Hospital. The Dartmouth General Hospital Foundation CEO Stephen Harding will be our guest. You're listening to The Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes. Welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. Dan Alstrand here with you on this. It's Wednesday, right? Vanessa shaking her head. Yeah, it's Wednesday. These short weeks and they just my mind just gets. By the time I get it figured out, it's Friday and we're done, right? So it is Wednesday. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Hope you're having a fantastic day and hope you have your mind more squared around than mine is this morning. But that's neither here nor there. Came across a story last week, I think it was, where the Dartmouth General Hospital, we know, is a valued resource in our community, and was the scene of an act of kindness that's going to have a lasting impact. And when I heard about it, I knew that I had to immediately pick up the phone and call the our good friend and the president of the Dartmouth General Foundation, and that's Stephen Harding, and the CEO, of course. And he's on the phone with us. Stephen, how are you?
Good morning, Dan. Thank you for having me.
Oh, no, I'm glad that you took some time out of your day to join us. Tell me a little bit about this donation to the hospital to maybe upgrade or improve the cafeteria.
Oh, what an incredible gift. Yeah, we're so honored to be recipients of a gift from Roger and Lindsay King. They own the Supplement King, and in honor of their 100th store opening that happened in Vancouver, they wanted to make a gift back to the community, and what an incredible gift! $500,000 gift to our staff, which is incredible, to help revitalize the dining hall space where our staff and where families have a meal while they're waiting for their loved ones or while they're on a break.
It's and I wouldn't want to say it's a badly needed upgrade, but it's a most welcome upgrade, correct?
Absolutely. We have a brand new hospital, which, thanks to the expansion of the Neville Guilfoyle wing, we have 8 brand new operating rooms. We have 3 brand new endoscopy suites. We have a brand new hospital where patients are, front and center with our receiving care, with our doctors and nurses. But this space, is kind of always the afterthought, right, in terms of cafeteria space. So this gift, when Roger and Lindsay saw the current cafeteria space, they said, well, I think that the staff deserve this and deserve an upgrade. So what an incredible gift. Our Lead On campaign has been focusing on, an orthopedic robot, state-of-the-art MRI with artificial intelligence, but, tremendous innovation. But for a gift to come to our staff directly is incredible. Like, what a great act of philanthropy.
Tell me a little bit about what this money is going to go. Do we know what upgrades are going to happen, or is that still in the early stages?
We wanted to ask our staff first what they wanted, so we've just finished a survey that happened at the end of summer, so end of August. We had 307 staff members complete the survey, which is a good indication there that there's a great sense of optimism and need for this new dining hall. So the designers are now digesting all of the feedback and are updating what the design could look like, and we hopefully next week we'll be seeing what that design will look like. And, the whole focus is really going to be increasing the number of spaces. We have a growing staff complement here at Dartmouth General. We've gone from 900 staff 5 years ago to 1,300 staff now. We need more space, a larger space. But what Roger and Lindsay really wanted to make sure that we not just included modern dining hall chairs, but soft seating as well, like places where staff can relax, charge their phones, have a conversation, like a more modern space. So it'll be called the Roger and Lindsay King Dining Hall and Lounge. So a lounge for that, giving a place for staff to kind of recharge and refuel and rejuvenate. It's going to be a really great space.
Stephen, is there a timeline on it? Do you have like a date circled on the calendar when you'd like to have this completed by?
Well, we hopefully we'll have designs next week, and then once the designs are approved, again, we want to go back to staff and show them the designs based on their feedback, and we want to then, once that's approved, then we'll tender the work, which will take some time, of course, and I know everyone's busy, but we're hoping through the winter months to do construction, and next spring to have everything unveiled, a new space for staff.
Stephen, you mentioned the Lead On campaign that's underway. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes, this Lead On campaign is following the Above and Beyond campaign, which created the Neville Guilfoyle wing with all the new operating rooms. The Lead On campaign was kind of a follow-on to that, which really focuses on giving our leaders the tools they need to deliver exceptional patient care. So our goal was $15 million, and we've now passed it. We're at $15.8 million now in terms of results. Again, donors have really stepped up in a big way. Again, it included the orthopedic robot. Dr. Jennifer Layton, thanks to this campaign, was able to do the first robot-assisted hip replacement using the Mako robot in Canada, first in Canada here at the Dartmouth General. Another cornerstone was the new MRI, so we now have an MRI in Dartmouth. As you know, Dartmouth is booming, right? There are, 10 new subdivisions within a 10-minute radius of Dartmouth General. The population growth is something that is real here in Dartmouth, and we're looking to kind of build our capacity so patients don't have to drive to Antigonish to get an MRI. They can now come to Dartmouth General to get their MRI, which has a state-of-the-art, artificial intelligence-enabled MRI, state-of-the-art, which is great to have this here. So again, the donors have been so responsive, including Roger and Lindsay King, for this gift to our staff. It's been a great, heartfelt experience working with donors on all of these priorities.
Stephen, the fundraising cycle never ends, does it? And I would imagine that there's always things that we need to buy. So if somebody wants to learn more about the Dartmouth General Hospital Foundation, how do we do so?
You're right. We are continuing looking for new opportunities to kind of work with government in partnership. Again, that's where the magic really happens, when philanthropy and donors work with government. That's the magic, where we can go from good to great. So we're in the process now of identifying our next series of priorities. So people can go to www.dghfoundation.ca and find a lot of our work there. We have a whole innovation fund that's happening thanks to the John and Judy Bragg family and the innovation fund they've created. We have these new wearables that we're testing for the province here at Dartmouth General. These are vital sign monitors in the emergency department.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, many of your listeners, the emergency department is really busy and patients are triaged appropriately.
Mm-hmm.
But we're testing a system where they all have an opportunity. If they come with a respiratory issue or a cardiac issue, we're giving them a Masimo smartwatch,
mm-hmm.
which they will wear, and it monitors their vital signs. So imagine if you're sitting in the emergency department, you may be worried or nervous. With these Masimo watches, we have the nurses monitoring them in the back. So if people have a change in their vital signs, they can be re-triaged and move forward. A great innovation thanks to the John and Judy Bragg Innovation Fund that's really doing great things. And this is a perfect example of what they're trying to achieve, where Dartmouth General is a living lab for new innovations for Nova Scotia. We test them here in Dartmouth General, and they will hopefully go across the province if the pilot works. And this is an example of just that, where this is already looking to be rolled out to 10 other sites in the province.
Exciting time, Stephen. I appreciate yours.
Thank you very much, Dan. We really appreciate your help.
That is Stephen Harding. He is the Hospital Foundation, Dartmouth General Hospital Foundation CEO. And that really just kind of sounds like a no-brainer, right? With the watches. I mean, my watch tells me when my heart rate goes out of whack. Usually it's during the open hour. Which, of course, is going to happen at noon today because it's 11 o'clock. And don't forget Dr. John Gillis, or at noon today because at 11 o'clock, Dr. John Gillis will be joining us to do house calls. But what a neat innovation and lots of great work happening over there at Dartmouth General, and courtesy of everybody that signs the checks, because we don't do a lot of things in innovation-wise without some donation support. And a $500,000 upgrade to a facility for the workers over there at the Dartmouth General. And if you've listened to the stories over the last years, they're working all kinds of crazy hours. And that will be a welcome addition, I think, to the Dartmouth General Hospital. Need to stop down. When we come back, is it time to privatize NSLC? Alex Whalen, the Atlantic Canada Prosperity Director at Fraser Institute, will join us. You're listening to The Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes.
Axe.
This commentary I believe it's in today's paper. It certainly is on the Saltwire website, and it reads like this. Due to new provincial rules, which went into effect September 5th, convenience stores in Ontario are now allowed to sell beer, wine, and other alcoholic beverages. And beginning Halloween, grocery stores in that province will be able to sell alcohol as well. Ontario, just the latest province to loosen regulations surrounding alcohol sales. Closer to home, New Brunswick implementing beer sales in liquor stores in 2019, while a report commissioned by the government of Newfoundland and Labrador recommends privatization. Unfortunately, according to this piece, consumers in Nova Scotia continue to have less choice and pay higher prices because the supply and retail of alcohol in the province remains a strictly controlled monopoly. And it goes on to read, clearly it's time for the Houston government to privatize the Nova Scotia Liquor Corporation. The case against the government monopoly on alcohol sales is rather straightforward. Monopolies generally drive prices up by restricting competition. Very pleased to welcome into the program today to give us a little more context on the whole thing is the author of that piece, the director of Atlantic Canada Prosperity for the Fraser Institute, Alex Whalen. Alex, how are you?
Good morning, Dan. I'm doing well, thanks.
That discussion, or the discussion on privatizing NSLC, is not a new discussion. Why do you think the government's so resistant on doing it? Is it a cash cow?
It does generate revenue for the province, but I think some people would be surprised to learn how relatively small a share of the provincial budget is revenue from the NSLC. I point out in the piece it's less than 2% of overall provincial revenue. I think that may be one reason governments are reluctant to privatize, but I also think there are vested interests, such as government sector unions, that obviously resist the move because it's against their interests. And so I think that may be part of the reason as well, that it's simply a fight that governments don't want to touch, but that doesn't mean it's not a good idea.
What's the benefit to consumers of a private NSLC?
What we see in other jurisdictions is that privatization tends to lead to more competitive pricing and an increase in the variety of products. That simply makes sense because in a non-monopolistic system, in other words, a privatized system, product availability and pricing is subject to competitive pressures, in contrast to what we have in Nova Scotia, which is a government-dominated system.
And what is the benefit to government other than to appease, as you mentioned, the union, to keep it under their umbrella?
Well, I think governments would see a pretty positive response from consumers if they were to privatize alcohol retail in the province. We see this in other jurisdictions. Retail alcohol was privatized in Alberta in the 1990s. And as you pointed out off the top, there's been some degree of privatization in other provinces, such as Ontario and New Brunswick recently. Certainly anybody that's traveled to the United States will see all kinds of private options for the retail of alcohol. So what we've seen in the past here in Nova Scotia is that when consumers are asked, they overwhelmingly say that they would like to see our alcohol markets privatized. And
that's the part that kind of freaks me out, Alex, is I hear it all the time that the government should get rid of NSLC, and not just the Houston government. Previous governments have all been asked, and they just don't want to, and that's just weird to me.
Agreed. I think it's a bit of an under-the-radar policy issue, and that's part of the reason I wrote the piece, is to try to raise a bit of awareness about this topic. Very little has been done, as you point out, in Nova Scotia in this regard. The province did allow for 4 private retail stores way back in 2002, and this issue comes up every few years, but there has not been a lot of movement, and I think it's, like you say, quite clear that it would be popular among consumers.
And I know that industries like the craft beer industry and the craft industry in general would be happier with that, because sometimes they're almost forced to have their products sold at NSLC at what they charge.
Absolutely. And when you look at our craft beer or our wine industry in Nova Scotia, it's important to point out we're talking today about the retail component of alcohol, and certainly privatization would be beneficial in that regard. But in general, those industries and other industries are really under the thumb of government in this province. And it's important to understand that we have the largest government sector in the country here in Nova Scotia. It currently makes up over 60% of the provincial economy. And so when you look at a statistic like that, I think it's incumbent upon us as Nova Scotians to ask, well, what is government doing that it shouldn't be doing? And I think the retail of alcohol is a very obvious answer to that question.
You write in your piece that the president of the Nova Scotia Government and General Employees Union, that's the NSGEU, has claimed that privatization of NSLC would lead to a quotation here, slew of social issues. That we hear and have heard a lot, particularly in the Ontario model, when they made the decision to move to private stores, that was going to be the end of humanity.
Right. I think it's quite important to note that privatized retail of alcohol is done safely all over North America. We did take a look at the privatization that occurred in Alberta in the 1990s, and the Fraser Institute publication at that time found that there was actually no evidence of increased social harms. I have no problem with unions sort of defending their own interests, but I think it's important to look at the facts when it comes to the social harm side of the question.
If we privatized the sale of retail sale of alcohol in Nova Scotia, the government would still get its own, right? It would still charge those taxes, and it would still go into the government coffers, and they'd lose the overhead of the stores. So it would make monetary sense, wouldn't it?
That's right. I mean, the province does get a dividend every year from the NSLC. And they would be losing that dividend, but they would make up a substantial portion of the dividend through business taxes, corporate taxes, sales taxes, et cetera, that would flow in from a private system. So generally speaking, we see the fears about revenue losses tend to be overblown in these cases.
Do you think we'll ever see it here, Alex? Do you think we'll ever see a government step up and say, okay, we're going to divest ourselves of NSLC and open it up to the private market?
I do think we'll see a government at some point decide to capitalize on what would be a very popular policy. We've seen it elsewhere, as we've discussed here today, and I think what's really telling is that the jurisdictions that choose privatization tend not to go back. So I think an enterprising politician at some point will capitalize on that, and our goal is just to raise a bit of awareness.
Do you think that we should do the same with the cannabis stores in Nova Scotia and open that up to the private market?
Absolutely. I mean, I go back to the size of government question. We have a large and burdensome size of government here in Nova Scotia. And so government really should be reviewing all of the areas that it is operating in that could be handled by the private sector. And the retail of alcohol and cannabis are just very obvious choices to me. And I think it's worth noting that government has a legitimate role to play as a regulator. And I think it can perform that regulatory function much more effectively if it is not also in the retail business of the same product.
Alex, the concern I have with cannabis is, and I don't know if you've been to Ontario recently, particularly Toronto, is that it seems there's a pot store on every corner. Is there a happy medium from what we see on like Queen Street East, where every second store is a marijuana dispensary, as opposed to locked up tight at the NSLC?
That's a good question. I haven't looked at that specifically. I mean, in general, my answer would be if the market can support it. I don't know why we should get in the way of that, aside from regulating things like safety. But like I said, I haven't looked closely at that question.
Fair enough, Alex. I appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
That's Alex Whalen, who just wrote a piece on privatizing the NSLC. Might be something you want to talk about when we open up the telephone lines at noon today. Is it time for the government to get out of beverage alcohol sales and by extension now cannabis? I mean, the government hasn't seemed to have done a really good job selling weed. It wasn't the cash cow. Maybe I'm speaking out of class here, but I don't think it's the cash cow that many thought it was going to be when the federal government legalized pot. It seems that they struggle to compete against the black market. Some will tell me, and I'm going to be very forthright here and say I'm not a cannabis user. Haven't been since I was in college, which was more than 5 minutes ago. But that being said, I hear from people that the product at NSLC and at the cannabis side of things is inferior to what they were getting or are getting from the black market. Prices are getting better, but are out of whack. Is it time that we get rid of the government control over booze and beer and pot and get it into the private market? I can tell you that Alex mentioned it a few times that it happened in Alberta many moons ago, and I was posted in Alberta when privatization happened, and I can tell you that liquor stores sprung up overnight and were competing against each other. And as we all know, competition's a good thing, right? It's good for the consumer. They have legit sales. Something to think about. Keep that in the back of your mind when we open the telephone lines up at 12 o'clock for the midweek meltdown. Need to stop down for the news. Blake's going to update us on what's going on in our world. And when we come back, it's time for house calls. Dr. John Gillis will be here for the next 60 minutes to answer your medical-related questions. If you have a question for the good doctor, give us a call. The telephone lines are open. 902-405-6000 is the number. You're listening to The Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Allstrand. We're back in minutes.
Facts.
Dr. John, you're my medicine man. Dr. John, you're my medicine man.
I don't use no potion, I don't use no pill. Just give me a little loving care, I can cure your ills.
Welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. Dan Allstrand along with you. That music can only mean one thing on the Todd Veinotte Show, and that means it is 11 o'clock. It is Wednesday morning, and that means it's time for Dr. John. House calls with Dr. John Gillis now on the air. If you have a medical-related question, if you have something that's been bothering you, maybe looking for a bit of a second opinion on something you've heard from maybe another doctor or somewhere else, this is your opportunity to get that access to a doctor, which these days isn't easy. And many will tell you that. 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. Just waiting on Dr. John to connect up with us here before we get on with the segment. As I mentioned, after the noon news, we will be throwing open the telephone lines today for the midweek meltdown. There's lots to talk about, obviously. Talk about NSLC. I think that's a worthy discussion to have, and I think that the more we talk about it, we all know that those in the halls and the corridors of power listen to this program, and they will respond. And I hope that maybe the discussion can get reignited about getting rid of the monopoly of NSLC and maybe opening it up to the private market. I think that anytime that we, and I'm using the word nationalize, but anytime that a government takes over something that should be run by private enterprise, it ends up costing the consumer much more than it should. And I think that the government's going to get its due anyway. It's going to get the tax. It's going to get all of that stuff that it's getting anyway. Why not let the private sector run it? Just saying. Anyway. Might be something for you to think about when we open up the telephone lines at 12 o'clock today. But first, it's house calls, and we're very pleased to welcome back to the show again this week, Dr. John Gillis. Dr. John, how are you?
Doing well, thanks. How's it going?
It is going well, sir. Before we get into the phones, been talking to a lot of people, and a lot of people are coming down with these viruses that you've been talking about all week. Been any change? Are you seeing an uptick in COVID and this RSV?
Oh, absolutely. It's COVID, it's RSV, it's influenza, it's whatever else is out there. There's just a lot of it going around, and it's adding to the burden in the emergency rooms. We talked about the change in the masking policy. I think that's why. I mean, we've seen the numbers coming, and as we get into the winter season, I'm just concerned it's going to get worse. So
the masking, how's the masking going? Has it been well received?
Well, I mean, I think this is the change was for staff, and for some people it didn't make much of a difference anyway. A lot of people still wore them most of the time, and it seems people get it. They don't want to get other people sick. They don't want to be sick, so whatever we can do to mitigate generally is well received.
902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000 is the number. If you have a medical-related question, this is your opportunity to chat with the good doctor, and we welcome Donald to the program. Donald, how are you?
Not too bad. Thank you for taking my phone call there.
Your question for the doctor, please.
Yeah, just been diagnosed with high blood pressure. I currently go to the gym, work out, and I just want to know, I'm on medication for the high blood pressure, by the way. Just want to know, I do some resistance training, and I just want to know if I should be taking creatine monohydrate, or should I stop?
Well, I mean, that's a fairly general question. I mean, what are you worried about?
Is it going to affect my, my blood pressure? That's it. I just want to know if I should be taking supplements.
No, probably not. I mean, it's really just a protein component. I mean, what it basically does is helps people build muscle, but one of the ways it does that, it just, pulls more, water into muscles. As long as you're taking it at a suggested dose, it should be fine. Has someone told you not to take it?
No, I never. That's something I never asked the doctor because when I got medicated, it was through the walk-in clinic and wasn't on my mind at the time. So I never really asked the doctor that seen me, because I don't have a family doctor.
Yeah,
right?
I think it's fine generally. Some people take way too much, and loading your body with too much protein, can affect the kidneys, which can affect your blood pressure. But at reasonable doses, it should be fine. I mean, again, the question comes back to what you're taking it for, and if you're taking a reasonable dose, and that's
okay.
Perfectly fine.
Yeah,
so just carry on with that.
5 grams a day. That's all I take.
That should be fine.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Thanks, Donald.
Thank you.
902-405-6000. It's 902-405-6000. Dr. John, I think we talked about supplements last week, and there's a bajillion of them on the market. Is there any concern that you may be doing more harm than good if you mix things, or is there an authority on what supplements you should take, depending, I guess, on what you're trying to do at the gym?
Oh, there's just so much out there. There's so much, that's regulated, not regulated, and, a lot of stuff that, is a bit of smoke and mirrors that doesn't necessarily do anything for you. I mean, hard work, it's the biggest factor. Some of these pre-workout supplements are just caffeine, and some of the, less reputable stuff is ephedrine or pseudoephedrine, which, does boost your energy, but can also, have impact on blood pressure and things. So information is important, and, some supplements can be helpful, but again, it's not a substitute for, getting off your arse and working hard.
That's the goal, right, is to do that. And, but everybody kind of tries to look for a way to cut a corner, correct?
Absolutely.
902-405-6000 is the number. We welcome John to the program. John, how are you?
How you doing? Not too bad.
Your question, please.
I'd like to mention something to John. John, I had cancer there last year, and kidney cancer, and it got removed. But before the cancer was removed, my blood pressure went up really high. After I got the kidney cancer removed, I was still taking high blood pressure pills, and of course my blood pressure bottomed out, but it's back to normal again. And I noticed that with a few friends and people I know that had cancer removed. Is there a correlation between high blood pressure and cancer? Because it just seems like, after I got the cancer removed, everything went back to normal. My blood pressure is perfect. It's like 110/70. Hello?
Yeah, there's a lot of factors there. So, I mean, the term cancer is far too broad to apply that. There's thousands of types of cancer. Kidney cancers that are affecting your kidney function can affect your blood pressure. If they're pressing on something, if they're pressing on one of the renal veins or arteries, it's hard to say. I mean, in your case, your body rebalanced, and it's...
It just is funny that one person had bowel cancer and another person had stomach cancer, right? So there's 3 different cancers there. And when they got the bowel cancer removed and the stomach cancer removed, blood pressure went back to normal. I just kind of notice things like that right now. I was just wondering. I just thought I'd mention it.
Yeah, I think it's more of a case. Well, in some cases, it may be more of a case of the stress and the pain associated with the illness than the cancer itself. That's probably the most likely thing.
Thanks for the call, John. 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. If you have a medical-related question, Dr. John's here until the top of the hour to answer them. You're listening to The Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes. Welcome back. This is House Calls. He's Dr. John Gillis. He's here for the next little while to answer your medical-related questions. There's lots of open lines. If you have a question that you'd like the good doctor's advice on or to have answered, here is your opportunity. Quick hitters, as we like to call them around here. 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000 is the number. Dr. John got an email during the break from a 48-year-old man who says he's having problems with erectile dysfunction and would like to use a natural supplement for testosterone. Your thoughts on that?
I mean, this has, driven me crazy for a long time. I mean, what does natural mean?
Right.
Is there a mountain goat who you cut off a bit of his hoof and you eat that while jumping on your left foot, and does that boost your testosterone? What does that even mean? So there are things out there that claim to boost testosterone. Do they actually do that? What is the evidence that they actually do that? Find out. The broader question is, I get asked this all the time. There are people out there that, as they age, have low testosterone and need supplementation. There are a lot of people out there that are, chasing the fountain of youth and, want to be 25 and bulletproof again. And, testosterone in the short term can help people that have generally low levels, but it does, suppress your natural testosterone and, can have some side effects. So there are people out there who need it, people who don't. So ask yourself what natural means and what you're looking at, putting in your mouth. And, really assess the pros and cons of whether you want to do it or not. Nothing is going to, make the 48-year-old or the 50-year-old 20 again. Again, diet and exercise and keeping up with things. And look, and there are people that do need supplementation, that do need boosting, but a lot of people are chasing the rainbow and, need to not do that.
ED or erectile dysfunction, is testosterone the only way that you can treat that, or are there other methods?
No, I mean, that's only part of the equation why people have erectile dysfunction. In some cases, it's psychological based on what a person's been through. It can be relationship-based. It can be due to diabetes or other conditions that affect the nerves in the area. So there's a whole list of reasons, why people can have problems. And, cracking on the testosterone isn't necessarily going to solve the problem. Some people can solve the problem just with, supplementation with medications, but you want to look for a baseline medical problem, which could include testosterone, but is not the only thing, and to figure out if there's psychological or personal issues affecting things.
We've all seen the ads, Dr. John, the little blue pill that is part of the solution, but it's probably best to speak to a doctor before you go and just order those things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, is it right for you? Not to say it isn't. It can be very helpful and beneficial for some people, physically and psychologically, and it's helped lots of relationships and maybe harmed a few others. But you should definitely get advice to make sure you're not missing something medically.
902-405-6000 is the number. James has a question about testosterone. James, welcome. I lost Dr. John. Hang on, James. I'm going to put you on hold. I knew I was going to do that. I was doing so well, too. He'll call back. Anyway, the telephone lines are open, 902-405-6000. I know, I've got fat fingers. 902-405-6000 while we wait for Dr. John to join the program again. If you have a medical-related question, I promise I won't hang up on you. This is your chance to call into the show, 902-405-6000. Dr. John, I apologize for that. I'm a bad host. Let's welcome James to the program, and he has a question about testosterone. James.
Hey, John, how are you?
Doing well.
Hello. Hey, so doctor, about 5 years ago, I visited my doctor with some, my family doctor with some general symptoms that were really, like, I was completely unfamiliar with, and I was about 38, 39 years old. So I was sluggish, I was brain fog, and I was, like, I was just fatigued all the time, and my doctor said, well, maybe you're depressed. I said, okay, well, let's, like, what do we do? He goes, let's do some blood work, first of all. You haven't had your blood work done in a long time. And so I said, that sounds good, doctor. So we went and got my blood work done. And I said, would you mind if I had a copy of it? Trained physician, I'd love to learn how to read those labs. And he said, no problem. So he gave me a copy of it. And so on the flag, my free testosterone was 2.1, and the range was 2.5 to 11. So I was out of range at 38 years old as a professional athlete who eats clean and trains all the time and doesn't smoke cigarettes and barely drinks and don't do drugs. So I went back to him and I said, like, I'm out of range here. Like, is this a problem? And he said, no. I said, well, what about all the symptoms I've noticed spark up recently? He goes, well, maybe you're just depressed. Have you considered trying an antidepressant? I said, well, no, I'm not. I have nothing to be depressed about. I have a great life. Like, unless you see something else that you can explain to me that neurochemically makes sense.
James, in the for time, can you get to your question, please? We're just up against the break here.
Just a lot of people I know that suffer from some of the symptoms of low testosterone are getting referred to, like, SSRIs, and is there any reason why?
Well, I mean, some of those symptoms can be depression-related. I mean, I can't speak for the logic that was applied by your doctor. I mean, if someone truly is demonstrably low and, has symptoms, it's reasonable to consider treating them. I can't explain why somebody didn't want to do that. I see people all the time who come in with normal levels and want me to give them, a bunch of testosterone, and, most of the time the answer is no. But if it's, and again, I'll take your word for it. I don't see a lot of people getting put on SSRIs for low testosterone, but maybe that is happening. So, the answer usually is if you're not happy with the pathway, go discuss it and ask for another opinion and, try to resolve it that way. But, I mean, what you're saying certainly seems reasonable, but, there are people who are feeling that way because they are depressed. So it's trying to find that balance.
Well, yeah, like I went to a naturopath, the medicine shop on Quimple Road, and got prescribed a very small dose of topical, testosterone cream, and it radically changed my symptoms. They disappeared in 2 weeks.
So just out of curiosity, how did a naturopath prescribe you testosterone?
So are you familiar? Say that again?
Yeah, I mean, naturopaths, some naturopaths out there doing great stuff, but most of them don't have prescribing powers.
So Dr. Jennifer Johnston, the girl who's the practitioner for the Quimple Road pharmacy shop, she's the one that actually writes the script, and the naturopaths handle the intake consultation and make the recommendations, and then the blood work gets done, then the doctor confirms it, and then it gets, so technically it was a doctor who wrote that prescription with she has 4 naturopaths at work for her that refer through them. Because, yeah, I think you're right. Naturopaths don't have scribing rights right now in our province, at least. But they're not pushing subcutaneous or intramuscular. They're specifically promoting transdermal.
Okay, so it helped you quite a bit.
Within 2 weeks, the brain fog was gone. The lack of motivation was gone. Some of the ED effects were completely gone. And moreover, when I tested my levels with it 3 months later, I was around 4.8. And then another 3 months, I was at 5.4. So in a range from 2.5 to 11, which is like a healthy place to be. I don't want to overdo it. I'm not chasing that same. I'm not motivated by the same things. I just want to be optimized. And it's so cheap. It's $100 for 2.5 months supply. Right? It's just like I wish it could have went through the conventional method. It might have been covered by MSI, but unfortunately we had to go private.
Thanks for your call, James.
Glad it made a difference for you, and thanks for sharing. Appreciate it.
Thanks for the call, James. I appreciate it as well. 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. House calls will continue after the news at the bottom of the hour. You're listening to The Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes. Welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. It's House Calls. He's Dr. John Gillis. The telephone number is 902-405-6000. If you have a question you'd like the good doctor to answer, this is your opportunity. Again, 902-405-6000. There are a few open lines if you want to get yourself into the queue and get your question answered. This is your opportunity. Let's go right to the phones and we'll welcome... before we go to the phones, I have an email question that I want to get. So hang on there, Len. We'll get to you in a second. Dr. John, I got an email just before the break from somebody who said, "Hi, Dr. John, I'm a marijuana newbie and am interested in using cannabis to help me sleep at night. 2 questions. Do I go the THC route or the CBD route? And the second question, what's the preferred method of using cannabis products? To smoke it or to get gummies or those kind of things?"
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there. I mean, the starting point is get as much information as you can, start low and go slow. CBD helps some people sleep. It's non-hallucinogenic. It relaxes people, and for some people is enough. So I certainly think it would be reasonable to start there. For some people, that's not going to work, so you have to sort of go beyond that and then develop an understanding of, THC products. It's kind of like when you're 19 and you got a date and you figure you should pick up some wine, and in your mind, with your non-existent knowledge, you know that there's red, you know that there's white, and then you go to the store and you learn that there's about 10,000 different types and subtypes of wine. Cannabis is somewhat similar, but generally the starting point, is the 2 major types, and it's, again, far more complicated than this, are sativas, which are sort of energizing and hype people up, and indicas. They say indica, couch. That's, the general type that makes people sleepy. And then, you break that down further into, some subtypes that can be, with the indicas and indica hybrids, and, some of the, what we call terpenes, some of the chemicals that vary within the subtypes. It can be a little hard to pick apart. So generally when people are looking for something for sleep, I tell them to look for an indica-based product, and I'll, come to delivery methods in a minute. As you start to understand a little bit more, there's another subtype of THC called CBN, which, is in a lot of the newer sleep preparations that we see out there. It's a sort of a weaker form of THC, for lack of a better word. So you'll see some of that. So as people build their knowledge. So coming to delivery, I don't like people smoking to sleep. Smoking is not good for your health. The 3 major delivery methods I would say are, vapes, sprays, and edibles. Vapes work quickly and disappear a little more quickly for some people who need to get to sleep quickly but don't have trouble staying asleep. That's a good solution. Vaping is better than smoking. We still don't have the jury on the long-term effects, but I'd certainly rather than smoking. Sprays are sort of in between. They'll kick in sort of 15 to 30 minutes, and, again, depending on how much you take, will last, 3 to 6 hours. Edibles can be very effective because they last longer, but they're hard to dose, and they can take up to an hour to kick in, so people tend to take too much, and then they're gorked and chasing the pizza the next morning. So, trying to find out the right mix, for you is important. I occasionally use an indica spray called Tweed Indica Spray that is available at the NSLC. If my cycle is messed up from working nights or from traveling, I'll occasionally use that. And I find it to be pretty effective. It works, like I said, in 15 to 20 minutes, but it is completely gone within, 4 to 6 hours. So there's no effect in the morning. I'm not stopping at McDonald's or anything on the way to wherever I'm going. But, knowledge, dosing, delivery method is quite important. It's like anything. If you don't know what you're doing, I do find the folks that the NSLC and such, they can't give you medical advice, but they can give you advice on how the strains work, what can be good for sleep. And there are some specific strains and products that are being marketed for sleep now. And if you check in with some of those folks that are selling the stuff, they can probably point you in the right direction. But hopefully that's a starting point.
Dr. John, when you take the spray to help get you to, you mentioned your cycle sorted out and you go to sleep and it's gone the next day. Do you, like when I take a supplement, like if I take a melatonin or whatever, I always feel like super drowsy the next day. Is that the same kind of side effect that you get with what you use?
No, not at all. I mean, that's the whole point. I mean, you have to find something and take something that is not going to do that. Otherwise, it's sort of pointless. I mean, if you're drowsy all day, it's of no use. I mean, melatonin doesn't do that to most people, so it either has a specific effect on you or it's maybe you took too much.
Yeah.
But no, that's the whole point, is to try and find something that will. There's different issues. Some people have trouble getting to sleep, but no issue staying asleep. Some people get to sleep, no problem, but have an issue staying asleep. So you're looking for how long something's going to last, but without going over. You don't want something that's going to affect you in the morning, make you sleepy, impair you in any way. And, there's still a stigma around this. I mean, people have no trouble cracking a sleeping pill, but they're like, oh, my God, you used weed to sleep.
Yeah.
You devil.
Yeah.
And, it's really the same thing, as long as, if you take too much Ativan or Valium or any sleeping pill and you're snoring, that's no good for either. It's understanding what a substance does for you, how long its delivery method is going to last, and to make sure it has the positive effect for you, but not a negative effect.
902-405-6000 is the telephone number. Let's welcome Len to the program. Len, how are you?
Yeah, do too bad. How's yourself?
Good. Your question for the doctor, please.
Yes, in the last week or so, and it was a little longer, but it became worse. But I'm not too bad today. I've been having a lot of uneasiness and losing my balance and a little dizziness. And I'm wondering, could that be an infection in my ear, or is it got? And my wife was telling me when she looked it up, she said it could be an ear problem or it could be your thorax. What do you think?
It's a very hard question to answer without examining you. I mean, there's so many causes of people being dizzy. Certainly, ear infections, middle and inner ear are some of them, but there are so many causes. Could be blood pressure, could be electrolytes, could be blood sugar, could be a lot of different things. So I would encourage you to get checked, regardless of that, if you're concerned.
Okay, because I'm not feeling too bad today, but I went to the gym and had an exercise and everything, and it didn't bother me to do that, but I was wondering if it comes back. I'm pretty sure it's going to come back again because, things aren't going to just disappear. Anyway, I'll do what you suggest, Doctor.
Thanks, Len.
Thank you very much.
Have a good one. 902-405-6000. Sorry, John, go ahead.
No, I just said take care to the gentleman.
902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. House Calls continues after the break. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes.
Axe.
Welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. It's House Calls. Dr. John's with us until the top of the hour. The telephone number 902-405-6000. Dr. John got an email during the break. It says, hello, can't call in, so I thought to try an email. It says, I'm an active 48-year-old male, and in recent blood work, my B12 level was over 950, which is well outside the reference range. I'm not supplementing B12. All other blood work was normal. I'm wondering if this is something to be concerned about and how I might need to proceed as I have no family doctor. And that from Dawn.
Yeah, so we see a lot of, varying B12 levels. A lot of the times, they're false positives or red herrings. They can be a sign of, various medical conditions, liver problems, some blood issues, people who are overweight. What I typically do is encourage people to get the level checked again. and just double check their diet or their supplements to make sure they're not taking something that is specifically high in B12, or a vitamin that they may not realize has it in there. You repeat the level and go back and check it again. And if it is persistently elevated, it probably is worth investigating again. But you don't want to ignore it. So it may be nothing. It may be a red herring. I get it repeated. Check your diet. Check your supplements. And if it is persistently elevated, you probably need to get it checked.
Is there a specific kind of food group that's high in B12?
Just leafy vegetables and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the times it's supplements, and people sometimes don't realize they're taking something. So going back, or they don't realize that something they're taking has B12 in it, rather. So it's important to evaluate those things.
Telephone number is 902-405-6000, and we welcome Donna to the program. Donna, how are you?
Oh, great, thanks. How are you?
Your question for the doctor, please.
Yes, hi, doctor. The last few months, whenever I fall asleep, I could be watching TV and I fall asleep in a chair. My hands start tingling and I feel like pins and needles, like falling asleep. Every time I fall asleep, this happens, and it happens at night. Sometimes it wakes me up in the night, and it's been going on for, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 months. And I mentioned it to my doctor, and he thought, well, probably I was just sleeping on my hand or something. But now it's like falling asleep watching TV, and I'm definitely not sleeping on my hands. And I do have an appointment with him at the end of the month, but I was just curious if you had any idea what that could be.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's, actually sleeping on your hands. It also is common, when people fall asleep, their head, turns to one side or the other, and they pinch a nerve in their neck. That happens to me if I sleep the wrong way. My whole left arm goes numb because I injured something a few years ago, and it never really settled down. So usually it is positional, whether it's coming from the neck, the shoulder, the elbow, or, in some cases in the hands. Other causes of tingling, I mean, if people's blood pressure is low, it can make them tingle. Usually that would, be all over. Nerve damage, just doesn't come and go like that. So the fact that it only happens when you're sleeping would suggest to me that it's probably positional. And, perhaps just consider your pillow and how you're moving, how you're sleeping. And, if that doesn't help, I would definitely circle back with your doctor, but I'd start there. Like I said, it happens to me.
Yeah, okay. It's just strange. I didn't understand why this was happening. I also wanted to ask you, is there a COVID shot coming out soon? A new one?
I hear there is, but your guess is as good as mine. I haven't seen anything definitive that when it's coming out. I suspect we will see something, and I hope we do, because we're seeing a lot of it around, as noted.
Yes, I know. I've had friends that have got it, and I don't want to get it again. It was really sick last time. So.
Okay, Donna, I appreciate your call.
Absolutely. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Have a great day. 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. Another email question, Dr. John, before we go back to the phones. It was something that we talked about earlier this week. We had a pharmacist on. This person says, I have a really sore throat. I think it's strep. What are the symptoms? What should I take? And can I prevent this from happening again?
Can you read that one more time? Sorry.
Sure. Strep throat. What are the symptoms? What should I take if I have it? And how can I prevent it from happening?
Yeah, so strep throat is a bacterial infection caused by a bacteria called streptococcus, which is fairly common. The symptoms of a true strep infection are fever, swollen glands, white pus on the tonsils, and usually no cough. People don't have a cough with it, and those are actually diagnostic criteria that we use. Couple of the problems out there are that there are people that are carriers of strep throat, that if you test them at any given time, they'll test positive even though they have no symptoms. So they may pick up a virus, which is unrelated to a bacterial infection, but someone does a test, they test positive, they keep getting put on antibiotics, but they'll test positive every day of the week. So it is important to correlate, the actual symptoms, what you're seeing, the things I mentioned, the swollen glands, the pus on the tonsils, the fever. And in terms of what you can do to prevent it, that's probably nothing other than, practice decent hygiene and keep yourself healthy. I don't think there's any great way to prevent it that I'm aware of. Most people don't get it very often. There are carriers who get it when their, immune system, is a little bit suppressed by another condition or something. It may present itself, but not a whole lot you can do.
And the treatment to that, is it still good old penicillin, or is there something that else that's the new treatment for strep?
Yeah, no, there are, various antibiotics. Penicillin remains the mainstay. We use macrolides like azithromycin as well. I mean, again, we just try to be careful of too much antibiotic use. Make sure you're actually treating a strep infection and not just getting put on antibiotics for a sore throat that's a virus, or the dreaded chest infection, the virus that gets people put on antibiotics, because we're seeing increasing resistance. And things like C. diff, bowel infections, because the antibiotics kill off the regular bugs in the bowel, and then you get an infection on top of it. So we're always trying to, if someone has a strep infection, you don't want to ignore it. Now, again, the flip side of that is recently we saw some very aggressive strep infections, which were causing other systemic problems. So it's finding that balance between not over-treating but not missing something as well. And I think it's made us all a bit more aware of looking at those symptoms specifically, swabbing, and managing the patient we see in front of us as to how sick they look or how they feel.
902-405-6000. Let's see if we can squeeze one more call in before we're out of time. We'll welcome Kathy to the program. Kathy, how are you?
Yes, good, thank you.
Your question, please.
Yeah, I've got a bit of a stumper. So I've got on my left forearm, I've had some tingling and itchy. It's been going on since June or July. There's no visible rash. It wakes me up through the night. I've tried antihistamines. I've tried creams. But the only thing that gives me any relief is ice packing it for about a half an hour until it's absolutely numb. I went away back in May to Dominican, and I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but I also broke my neck 3 years ago, so I don't know if it has anything to do with my C-spine. Any thoughts?
So, sorry, the primary problem is that your left forearm is numb, is that what you said?
It's not numb. It's like a tingling and a very itchiness, so I'm constantly scratching it, and the more I scratch it, the worse it becomes, like burning, itching, feeling. It wakes me up through the night, too, so I'm not sleeping well because of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a nerve irritation. I mean, the question is to determine where the nerve is irritated. Is it your neck, which you mentioned it could be? And again, as I said to the previous caller, you can have nerve irritation as the nerves track from the neck through the shoulder down through the elbow. People get swelling at the elbow, and that can affect the nerves on either side and cause them. And people describe it differently. Some people call it tingling, some people call it burning. It does sound like nerve pain. And the sensation of itching is a bit subjective. I mean, do you see any redness or inflammation, or is it just a feeling?
No, there's no inflammation or redness. There's no visible sign of a rash. I scratch it a lot, so it's almost becoming to the point where I excoriate it, or it's almost starting to feel like leathery, the skin, but I think it's because I'm scratching it so often.
Yeah, so I mean, I would probably talk to your doctor about assessing you to see if there's any evidence of nerve irritation, but you got to find a way to stop scratching it, because you're just going to give yourself a skin infection. Maybe cover it at night so you don't do that, and try to get to the source of where the inflammation is coming from.
Thanks for the call, Kathy. I appreciate it. And Dr. John, we're out of time. I appreciate yours, and we'll talk to you next week.
Pleasure as always.
That is Dr. John Gillis. He's here every single Wednesday to answer your questions from 11 until 12. We're going to stop down. Blake is going to update us on what's going on in the world. And on the other side of it, it's an hour dedicated to you. It's the Midweek Meltdown. Your chance to talk about whatever it is that is on your mind. A couple of things to ponder as we go to the break. We, of course, were talking earlier about the NSLC. Is it time that the province gets out of the liquor business and turns over the reins to the private sector? Would that be a benefit to consumers? Is that something you'd like to see here in Nova Scotia? And as a sidebar to that, if we privatize the NSLC, should we sell booze and beer in the corner store? That's one of the questions we can debate when we come back. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Olstrand. We're back in minutes. Welcome back. Dan Olstrand along with you here now on a Wednesday afternoon. Hope you're having a fantastic day. It's 12 o'clock. That means it's time, 12:04 actually, time to open up the telephone lines. It's time for the Midweek Meltdown, your chance to talk about whatever it is on your mind. The telephone number is 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. I mentioned before the break an op-ed this morning. We had a conversation with the author about the privatization of NSLCs. This is something that I think is well overdue in Nova Scotia. I think that the provincial government would continue to still make money off of liquor sales because we get taxed on it, right? And I think that if they shaved off the overhead, if they didn't have to run the stores and pay the employees, then that would be a bigger win for the provincial government. And as I mentioned earlier, when government runs something, it ends up costing the consumer more every single time. So if we turned NSLC into the private sector or made it available to the private sector to sell alcohol in the province and by extension cannabis, then better for the consumer, right? Maybe I'm wrong. 902-405-6000. Let's begin with Michael this morning. Michael, how are you?
Not too bad, Dan. This is a good subject, but it's long overdue for a discussion. Listen, I've been telling you for God knows how many years, they're doing it by stealth. Not only with the health care, now I'll get back to that in a second,
okay,
but on your liquor store part of it, on the Nova Scotia liquor stores. Why would they give up that? That's bringing money into the province and going into the coffers for the taxpayers. It's got well-paying jobs there and all the spin-offs that go along with it. They've been doing it, Dan, stealth-wise for the last 16 years. Every time we had a government change hands, whether it went to Tory, they had this little scheme going, oh, we have an agency store, and they'd give a license to sell liquor to a little store out, say, Marion Bridge, just for an example, or Marguerite for another example, or East Bay for another example. They paid off the ones that supported them politically. Now, if the government changed hands tomorrow and went liberal, just for suggestion, you'd turn around a year later, you'd find out one of the most popular entrepreneurs in your community, a well-heeled member of the Liberal Party, he'd get a license to sell liquor in the so-called agency stores. So they've been doing it by stealth. So, but they want to push it faster now and sell off the whole thing. If you learned any lessons, Dan, from the past, learn what they've done since they sold Nova Scotia Power off. Because the same thing is happening here on a smaller scale, and the same vultures that are selling her or selling her off are the same ones that are padding the pockets, are the ones that'll have the top shares in those smaller stores that get the license to go and sell the booze here in Nova Scotia, or the marijuana, or whatever it is. They're doing the identical thing by stealth with your health care system. You can't even get a doctor to take you to his office anymore. They just want to talk to you on the phone. They can x-ray you on the phone. They can cure a broken arm, anything over the phone. They won't even see you in an office anymore. Like an agency, there shouldn't even be a discussion where they're overpaying people to go run around so-called traveling nurses. If they're making that kind of money and that much money, Tell them to put roots down and start raising a family or bring a family up and contribute to the community along with providing the health care service that's so desperately needed. But I bet you won't get 2 or 3 calls this morning on it, Dave, because a lot of the callers that are calling in are giving them their blessing. They're liberals and Tories. And until people change that indoctrination that they got since they were born and over the last 150 years, there's nothing going to change. It's a bad idea. The same, it's a bad idea, traveling nurses, sell off your liquor commission. You're selling off something that the taxpayers own. And for God's sake, if there are any brains out there, hold on to it, because there's too much good jobs and spin-offs, and it's hard enough to control the stealing and everything. Can you imagine what will go on if they start giving out little licenses to sell it in small stores and everything? The hit and runs that they're showing on television and everything. It's time for people to wake up. Wake up, because if they don't, once you lose it, it's gone, and don't complain about the crime that follows it. I'll talk to you later, buddy.
You will, Michael. I appreciate your call every time. 902-405-6000. I guess Michael doesn't agree with me. And that's fair. That's what the beauty of the open hour is all about. This is how we have discussions. We can have polite discourse about things. I disagree with them. I think that the NSLC is getting hit now. We've heard many stories about people walking in there and just laughing at the staff when they're grabbing bottles of booze and leaving and going down somewhere else in the city and selling it off, and then those people are bringing it back, and then the NSLC is rules if it's open, they'll pay the refund on it. It's a racket, and that's with the government controlling it. I think that if it went to the private sector, I think that you're going to, and I will agree with Michael on one point that there are good paying jobs at NSLC, and I will say that. But if it goes to the private sector, I think that the consumer, the person that goes to the NSLC, will benefit from that. Government's still going to get its tax. Maybe there'll be some competition. Maybe we'll see prices drop. Or maybe I'm wrong. 902-405-6000. We welcome John to the program. John, how are you?
Yeah, not too bad, Dan. I'm fascinated from all these signs that
oh boy,
Andy Fillmore got out. There seem to be more fancier than the ordinary guy, and they're all over the block. Sometimes you're coming out of a road out there, number 7, blocked off with a tree at his sign. I wonder who's paying for all these signs? Is it coming out of his pocket or the taxpayers?
No, it comes out of his pocket. It comes out of his war chest.
I'm just wondering if the Liberals are just giving to help them out.
Well, you never know who donates, or we will know who donates to him, but that's after the election.
Yeah, but anyway, he's got a lot of people brainwashed. I mean, he's a little Trudeau to me, and he's for the carbon tax, but that's all you hear is his name. I'm not hearing anybody else's hardly names mentioned.
Well, there's 16 candidates out there.
I know there is. And I heard a story. He was in a restaurant eating, and some woman went in to ask him a question, and he had a police remove her.
I haven't heard that, and maybe it did, but I haven't seen that.
Well, that's not right. Anyway, if it did happen, but if we may as well leave Mike Savage in there and to put him in there. The people that are brainwashed on him, he's going to be shocked if he gets in. Okay, that's what I'm going to say, Dan.
Have a good one, John. 902-405-6000. The midweek meltdown continues after the break. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrand. We are back in minutes. And just a reminder, on Monday, Steve Murphy will return to the chair for Murphy Mondays, and as is tradition with Murphy Mondays, he will open up the telephone lines beginning right at 10 o'clock to all council candidates that would like a few minutes to join us on the air and tell us a little bit about themselves. We'll do that from 10 until 11 on Mondays. On Murphy Mondays, make sure you tune in to listen to Mr. Steve as he he goes about his business. Looking forward to having him back. He was away a couple weeks ago, and then we had the holidays, so we haven't heard him for a few weeks. But he will be back in the chair on Monday morning. Let's go back to the phone lines for the open hour and welcome Carl to the program. Carl, is this Surfer Carl?
Yes, sir, it is.
How are you?
I'm doing okay, man. Man, so many subjects and heartfelt opinions. It's great, though, isn't it? That's what you do.
It's the awesome radio. That's the power of the open hour.
Well, so here's the thing, okay, like Quebec, for example. That's the only thing I can make an example. It's that you can buy beer and wine at any corner convenience store while you're getting your gas or whatever.
Yep.
And they open early, 7 a.m. So, like, if you're taking a bunch of boys out on a boat to go fishing, sport fishing, whatever.
Responsibly, of course.
Well, of course. Well, the captain's not drinking, of course.
Yes.
But, yeah. And so, anyway, it's just a more dignified way of doing business. You buy, now they're not selling hard liquor. You still have to go to a province-owned, the SAC in Quebec.
Yep.
But the thing is that, it's so convenient just to get your beer and wine, whatever, at different, But the thing is, we got to keep in mind, everybody's ripping off NSLC. What makes you think they're not going to rip off the mom and pop store? I mean, it's like they're already getting ripped off too. And so it's going to create even a higher risk for store owners in that regard. But see, in Miami, where I'm born and raised, down there, I kid you not, you walk into any convenience store, every clerk at that's taking the money and everything, he has a gun right there on his hip. Right there on his hip.
Wow.
Yeah, all through Miami, yeah.
Holy smokes.
So there's a lot to think about on all these things. But see, here's the point I wanted to make was it's such a what we do there is when you buy a case of bottles of beer, you put the empties right back in the case. You bring the case back to where you bought it from, and they have these tubes. You just drop them down. They fall into the basement, into baskets and everything. It's really clean and organized. And rather than go to a place that smells like fermentation, with all these nasty places we got to turn our cans in, we can do that at the store, which is so nice and convenient.
Do it in Ontario, too. Yeah, the beer stores in Ontario take your empties.
Yeah, they give you the full price on the empties, too, not just half. Okay. That's
all right, man.
All right, good job.
Take care. 902-405-6000. It's 902-405-6000. I don't advocate that we should arm our store clerks, and I don't think Carl was either. I think he was just making a point. But I think that, there is a risk. There's no doubt there's a risk. And as I mentioned earlier, there's a risk at the NSLC right now with people going in there. And until we have better methods of enforcement is all I'll say on that. That's going to continue. That being said, why not give the store owner the option, right? If the store owner thinks, okay, well, I'm going to be allowed to sell beer and wine, if that's the model, or if we do the larger model of all three, and I'm willing to put my staff in a situation where there could be some risk, and I still want to make that decision. Let's put that into the hand of the store owner, as opposed to saying, no, can't do it. You guys can't handle it. You cannot possibly be able to sell booze and wine and beer because of you have to be 19 and you won't check, right? I think that's that method of thinking is a little bit outdated, if you ask me. 902-405-6000. Let's go back to the phone lines. Chris, how are you?
Not too bad, Dan. How are you?
I'm well. Haven't heard from you for a while.
No, not for a few days, for sure. I mean, I don't want to monopolize the valuable radio lines too much. There's other important people that have important things to say.
What's on your mind today?
Well, you had a call from a fellow named David. You had a couple of Daves, I think, yesterday, but this fellow identified as David, and he was talking about signs on developers' properties.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of picked up on that, as did you. So I took a drive around town yesterday, and he's more than right. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's pretty easy to tell which candidate in District 7, I'm referring to, is being supported heavily by developers. Just look at all the signs that are on the vacant lots on Roby Street, Yonge Avenue, Coburg Road, Beaufort Avenue, etc. One primary candidate that's running, I won't mention any names, you can see the big green signs with his smiling face on yourself. And that leads me to wonder that these councillors that are being supported by developers, make no mistake, the developers will be asking for favors from councillors who get elected that they have financially supported. I think we all know that happens in politics, there's no question. And if District 7, for example, or any district in the city, is happy with what the developers are doing, I'm certainly not, generally, especially with all the vacant lots around and the housing situation that we've got. I think that there's a potential for any candidate that's relying heavily on developers' money. There could be a conflict of interest there, and certainly developers looking for a payback.
Chris, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but are you suggesting that municipal candidates should not take money from developers?
I don't know if I'd go that far or not, but I might, given the fact that developers are in it. Let's face it, it's all about money.
It always is about money.
It's always all about money. And generally, developers do not spend money out of the kindness of their heart. Many people don't, not just developers, but many people don't. But the average citizen, you, for example, Dan, if you decide to give $100 or $1,000 or whatever you want to a local candidate in your district that you support their ideas and you want to help them out with their campaign, you're not going to be going to them and saying, I want something from you because I gave you $100 or whatever. These developers are given a hell of a lot more money than that. And there's ways of getting granted. You're not allowed to take from corporations, but developers have wives, they have cousins, they have brothers, they have aunts, they have uncles, they have children, et cetera, et cetera. You see where I'm going with that.
Yep.
So it's easy enough to funnel big amounts of money in, and there's one particular candidate that's had big developer support. Just drive down those streets that I've mentioned, Yonge Avenue, Robie Street, Cobra Grove, Beaufort Avenue, and you'll soon see it. Also, it was brought up yesterday, and I brought it up a couple of weeks ago, that in our District 7, and that's the only one I'm talking about because that's the only district that I know really well because I live here.
Yep.
Laura White does not live in District 7. She lives in District 9. I don't feel, granted, it's not against the law, we know that, but I don't feel that a candidate should be running in a district that they do not live in. To me, it presents a potential conflict of interest. For example, if you're representing District 7 and you live in District 9 and something comes up to vote at council that will benefit District 7 but might adversely affect District 9, how do you vote? Do you vote in favor of the district that you live in, or do you vote in favor of the district that you represent?
And I'll agree with you, Chris. So is the solution to that, well, there's two solutions to that. One, you change the law and you make it so that you have to live in that district. But two, could it not be conceivable that if you live in District 9 and you want to represent, or you represent District 7, that when those kind of conflicts come up that you just abstain?
Yeah, you could abstain, but that takes away the democratic process to a certain degree, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, because you're not representing your constituents. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. You have a rule for someone that wants to vote in a district. I believe you have to live there for 6 months.
I think it is, yep.
So maybe the same should apply to the candidate. I mean, what's good for the voter should be good for the candidate. Maybe they should have to live there for 6 months, at least live in, and not for just a month, sublet an apartment for a month to say, hey, I'm now living in district whatever. So I think, there should be some changes there. Also, you've
very
got
quickly,
else going on in District 7 that I don't agree with. You have the sitting NDP MLA canvassing on behalf of a family member who is running for council. And nothing wrong with that if you want to support your family member. But when you show up at someone's door saying words like, oh, perhaps you know me, I'm Lisa LaChance, I'm the MLA for Halifax Citadel, perhaps you know me, I'm canvassing for so-and-so. To me, that's using your status as such, as MLA, to potentially sway an election.
Well, isn't that happened to everything, though? I mean, anybody that's in a profile position, that's the way that endorsements work, right? And I get it. I understand the family connection. But if I supported a candidate in District 7 and I went to the door and said, hey, I'm Dan, I do the radio show, and I'm supporting this candidate, what's the difference?
No, big difference. You're not an elected official.
Okay, fair.
You're not going there as a partisan person. You're going there as Dan Alstrand, radio personality or whatever, or if Vanessa went, or if Todd or anyone, or a business person that owns a shop downtown, or whatever the case might be, you're not going as an elected official. And to my understanding, we know it doesn't happen, but municipal politics is supposed to be partisan free.
It is.
And that to me is totally wrong. If that lady wants to, Lisa LaChance in this case, if she wants to go up people's driveways and knock on doors and do whatever and not identify herself, it's a perception, and she may be quite innocently doing this, but it's a perception of using her position as a sitting MLA to influence votes in one direction or another. And I personally, I just don't agree with that.
Chris, appreciate the call as always.
Thank you, Dan, very much.
902-405-6000. The open hour continues after the break. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrand. We are back in minutes. Welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. It's the Midweek Meltdown. The telephone number, 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. Your chance to talk about whatever it is on your mind. We've been having a discussion about NSLC, and I'm starting to think that maybe I'm in the minority here because listen to Michael off the top of the show. Was very adamant in Michael's very specific way of telling me I was wrong. And hey, I'm big enough to admit that. But he thinks it needs to stay right where it is. Those are good-paying jobs, he said, and we need to keep that under government control. Got, I think, 2 emails during the break from different people saying the very same thing, that we need to leave the NSLC where it is because that is the appropriate place for beverage alcohol to be served or sold in Nova Scotia, and we need to protect all the good-paying jobs that we can. So maybe I'm off the mark. Am I? Should we privatize the NSLC? Should the provincial government get out of the booze business and send it into their private sector where we could have some competition in the market? Maybe have some cheaper prices on the shelves? Let me know what you think. 902-405-6000. Let's begin with Mike. Mike, how are you?
Good. How you doing, Dan?
I am well. What's on your mind today?
Well, I'm solidly in opposition to privatizing the NSLC as well.
Okay, why?
Well, the good paying jobs is part of it, but a big part of it is right now any corner store that sells cigarettes that's nearby a school or any place where young people hang out, minors hang out, that place is the place where all the kids go to buy their cigarettes because they know the likelihood of getting asked for ID is unlikely because generally speaking it's a minimum wage job as opposed to, you know, the money that would be made by an NSLC worker who would be much more likely to make sure like you're checking for ID. And I know privatizing the NSLC wouldn't be, you know, redesigning the wheel. I know other provinces do it. I know it's done all over the states, but the biggest thing that I look at is it's not out, and this is not going to be a popular opinion. Beer and alcohol is not a necessity, right? And I just really worry about. We already have problems with minors getting their hands on alcohol. I personally think it would be worse if it was privatized. I might be wrong. I might just be, you know, too old and stuck in my ways. And the other thing is, like you said, the provincial government would still get its tax revenue from the alcohol. But what it would be missing out on is the profits. So right now, even with the good paying jobs and everything, NSLC is still profitable. So we wouldn't just be losing out on tax revenue, we'd be losing out on the actual profit revenue from the NSLC.
Wouldn't that be better served in the private world, though? Because then wouldn't that generate jobs and property tax and all of that stuff?
I don't personally think so.
Okay.
But I mean, again, you may be right. I might just have my I might just have my head stuck in the sand and I might be stuck in the 80s or whatever. But
Mike, I get accused of being that all the time, so you're not alone.
And the only other thing I'll say is when we privatized Nova Scotia Power, that wasn't a big boom for the consumers. And
no, but I think that deal was fraught with mistakes right from the stop. Legislating a private company to return a profit every quarter, that would never happen if we legalized liquor sales. I can guarantee you that much.
Yeah, it may be it may be comparing apples to oranges. It's just when I hear about privatizing something that's profitable, that's the first thing that comes to my mind is, okay, it may not be as beneficial to the public as you think, but like I said, I might just be a dinosaur. So,
Mike, I appreciate the call. Good call.
Okay, take care.
Have a good one. 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. That's what the beauty of this open hour is. We can have a discussion on things, and maybe we change people's minds. I still think it's a good idea to privatize NSLC, but most people that have called and emailed me don't. So maybe I'm in the minority here. Let's welcome Mark to the program. Mark, how are you?
Good, Dan. Good. Just calling in regards to the mayoral candidates and in particular, Andy Fillmore.
Okay.
Just wanted to remind people that Mr. Fillmore was part of this federal Liberal Trudeau delegation that allowed way too many new Canadians in too short of a period, that helped create this housing crisis, housing prices, the hospital lineups, record deficit spending. This is the same gentleman that's got his fingerprints all over this federal government. So Halifax just can't afford Mr. Fillmore, the Liberal, to be mayor. I think it'll be a disaster if he does, and I'm sure his millionaire friends would all like to see it, but no, he'll be the last person on the ballot I put an X by. And as far as the liquor stores,
sure.
Dan,
Yep.
I was in Alberta when they went private back in
So was I.
mid-90s, I guess.
Yep.
If I'm
96,
guessing.
I think it was.
Yeah, and the small, medium-sized town I was in had one liquor store. And after that, they had like 7.
Yep.
And what they did in Alberta, as you may know, they went. They didn't give it to any of the grocery stores or any big companies. It was just individuals that set up their own little shop. So it did create a lot of work, and there was always sales and price matching and you name it. So it seemed to be pretty successful there. And I still talk to people out in Alberta, and there's no issue with people giving it out to minors. Like I say, as long as you don't give it out the license to every corner store, that's sure you could have maybe some issues. But when a company's just dealing with selling liquor and liquor only, they're going to have a well-trained staff.
Because they don't want to lose their license, right? Like they would be concerned about losing their ability to do it.
100%. So there are ways around it. When I think people just think it's going to go in every gas station, every corner store. Yeah, you could go that way, but that's not the way to go. You'd want to just give it to individual companies and just sell the liquor and take it from there. But thanks for your time, Dan, and hopefully we don't get any more tax increases anywhere in this province, federal or provincial, because I think we're tapped out.
Thanks for the call, Mark. I appreciate it. 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. Bob, welcome to the show.
Hi, Dan. How are you?
I'm good. What's on your mind today?
Just to comment on the liquor store. I'm for privatization, but I'm 65 years old. I don't think I'll ever see it in my lifetime. But their hours are like ridiculous. 12 o'clock on a Sunday and 10 o'clock every day of the week. On a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, people want to go to their cottages and stuff. And you go to a grocery store that's pretty much connected to every liquor store to get groceries. There's a lineup waiting for the doors to open at 10 o'clock so people can get on with their lives.
Yeah.
So the government has a monopoly that is not available to us when we want it available to us.
So better
You know what I'm
hours,
saying?
send it to the private sector.
Yeah, and I know for a fact because I have friends that work at the liquor store. They're there at 8 o'clock in the morning, stocking shelves, cleaning up. Why can't the doors be open?
It's a fair question, Bob. I appreciate your call.
Okay, thank you.
902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. Just to piggyback, I think his name was Mark's comment. I remember the small town, just before we take a break here, the small town in Alberta that I was in when a privatization happened. There was literally a liquor store, private liquor store that was across the street from another private liquor store, and it was wild. Imagine a young Dan being able to go to a sale on his favorite beverage and not pay any sales tax on top of it. Coming from Ontario at the time to Alberta, it was a eye-opening experience, to say the least. There's a few of you on the line. I'll get to you after the break. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I am Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes.
X.
Welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand along with you. The open hour continues right up until the top of the clock. The number 902-405-6000. Let's get to the phone lines and welcome Larry to the show. Larry, how are you?
Good morning.
Afternoon.
Yes, afternoon. It's morning by me. I live in Metro Vancouver.
Yeah, fair enough.
And regarding the liquor stores and that, we have both. We have government stores and we have private stores.
Okay.
And we also have the marijuana selling stores are private.
Yep.
But the municipalities get to decide whether or not they want to allow stores in their particular municipality.
Okay, fair enough. Larry, let me ask you this: is it cheaper to buy a bottle of whatever at the government store or at the private store?
Generally speaking, it is. However, sometimes we shop at one certain private store that my wife. She likes a certain beer. They have sales on it, and sometimes the private stores they get a lot of stock, and they'll mark things down. But generally, the government stores are cheaper.
Really?
Yes.
Oh wow!
In my opinion, they also that some of the larger grocery stores they've allowed them to have a wine section where they sell only bottles of wine. Which seems to work well. If you go to get in your groceries and you go pick out a bottle of wine and take home with your groceries, that works well.
So these are these private these private stores in BC, are they standalone stores or just exclusively liquor stores?
Some of them, some of them are exclusively liquor stores. Outside the pubs can have attached to them a beer and wine store, where they can sell liquor as well as beer and wine attached to the pubs. So you can really, they don't sell in the corner stores or the gas stations, but, there's lots of places you can buy it. There seems to be no adverse effect. The government workers are still working in the government ones, and it all works.
Larry, I appreciate the call.
Okay.
Have a great...
Okay.
Oh, no, have a great day. I appreciate you calling in. 902-405-6000. Let's welcome Tim to the show. Tim, how are you?
Not too bad, Dan. In Japan, there are no government stores. All liquor, spirits, beer, wine are sold in grocery stores or corner stores.
Okay.
They have no problem with drunks or anything like that. As a matter of fact, you can go in, buy a beer or whatever, walk out, pop the top, walk down the street, drink the beer, as long as you don't do something stupid. And there are plenty of states, I believe, that don't have government liquor stores.
Yep, many.
So it can't be done. It can't be done. And by the way, 2.7-liter bottle of Jim Beam in Japan in a corner store, a grocery store, $36 Canadian.
What's it here? I have no idea. I don't buy it.
You can't find a bottle that big here, and if you did, it'd be well over $100.
Holy smokes. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the second thing is, I hope no one votes for any of the present councillors back in. They're horrible. They've done a horrible job. And quite frankly, Andy Fillmore is just another Mike Savage look-alike liberal. So Jim Hoskins, you're going to get my vote, even though we disagree on a few things. And in my district, Mancini, there's a man who loves to hear himself talk. If you ask him a yes or no question, or one-word answer question, He'll go 5 minutes into a diatribe and half the time not answer the question.
Thanks for the call, Tib.
Thank you.
902-405-6000. Let's get back to the phones and welcome Tom to the show. Tom, how are you?
Not too bad.
What's on your mind?
So, with regard to liquor stores.
Sure.
Look, I've been in construction all my life, and I did a lot of work in liquor stores. Fair enough. And, you walk into a liquor store here, and it's spiffy, to say the least.
Okay.
But when I say worked in them, I looked after them. And some of the renovations that I looked after, we did everything on the plans. Guy comes in from an SLC and says, I don't like it. Tear it out. Tear it out. And so
that costs lots of money, I'm assuming, right?
Staggering amounts of money. And that money goes to the construction company. Look, I made a living at it. But, it was totally unnecessary. And I've lived here all my life, and I buy a bottle of booze here for X.
Mm-hmm.
I go south, and I can buy the same bottle of booze for who?
Much cheaper.
Lord.
Yeah. It's the
$60
tax, right?
versus $60 versus like $17.
Yeah, it's the tax regime is insane on liquor in Canada.
Yes, but part of that is because all of the liquor stores in Nova Scotia are really spiffy, and it doesn't matter. I was to PEI a few years ago. I walk into a liquor store, and the walls are plywood. The shelves are plywood. And so their prices were similar, but if the government wants to make money, nobody's going to walk into a liquor store and say, well, I like the store. I'm going to buy a bottle.
Yeah, it's destination shopping, right?
Exactly. And so the mindset of how that is portrayed is, from my perspective, retarded.
All right, Tom, have yourself a nice day. 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. Last word today goes to Nelson. Nelson, how are you?
Good, Dan. Good.
What's on your mind?
Hear your voice.
Thank you. What's on your mind?
Well, I got to tell you, last night on the news, I was quite surprised that the only government who's standing up for seniors is the Bloc Québécois.
Yeah, that's the bill that they're trying to get passed to keep the Trudeau government in power, correct?
Yes. They want a 10% raise for people from 65 to 74.
Mm-hmm.
A 10%, that would help out so many seniors. It's amazing. And to take the Quebec Party, the only one to bring it up, not the NDP, not the Tories, not the Liberals, and the Liberals say, we can't afford it. The senior citizens have got nothing since COVID, except for the people over 75. The rest have got nothing. Everybody else needs their minimum wage moved up. Nothing has been said about the senior citizens. Nothing. So apparently the only plan that our federal government has for senior citizens is MAID, assisted suicide. That appears to be the only plan they have for seniors. How are we going to pay our taxes? And
I don't know if that's the only plan, Nelson. You might be stretching the truth there a little bit.
What's the other one, Dan?
Well, I get it, and I understand, but I mean, it's not, I get a raise or I have to use MAID, right? That's kind of ridiculous.
We have been giving nothing. Senior citizens have been given nothing, zero, and we're supposed to continue to live in our homes? we're not going to be able to live in our homes with the way insurance rates are going up and repair rates and everything else.
Oh, I get
There's
it.
no way.
I get it, but the
There
out
is
is the
no
out
way
isn't
we're
the
gonna
out
be
isn't
able to live in our
assisted isn't assisted dying isn't the out, is it?
That's it. What I could see, because government is offering it more and more. It's gone up by over 30% in the last year.
Nelson, we're out of time. I appreciate your call. 902-405-6000 will be the number you dial tomorrow when we open up the telephone lines for the open hour. I don't even know what to say to that. Anyway, I get it. I understand he's frustrated, and I understand that seniors haven't had a raise, and I get it, and I know it's tough, but MAID isn't the solution to that. It isn't. It never will be. Anyway, I appreciate each and every one of you for taking time out of your day to call the show, dial the numbers, and share your thoughts. For the most part, I agree with most of you. I'm apparently wrong on the NSLC file, and hey, I'll admit it. I still think it's a good idea that we privatize liquor stores, but many of you don't. So that's the beauty of this program. As a colleague of mine once said, the late, great Andrew Crystal, the open hour is the last bastion of democracy. And we will continue to do that. And again, we will do that tomorrow. We've got a big show planned for you tomorrow. I hope you can join us because it's action-packed, as they say. Lots to talk about. We'll have a conversation tomorrow with Matt Houston, who is a real estate broker. They just did a study, and the office space in Halifax, in HRM, the vacancy rate is dropping, which is something that we've been kind of watching for some time. So we'll talk to Matt about that tomorrow. Musician David Miles is coming into the program, into the studio tomorrow, and I'm pretty excited about that. I have a good conversation with David. And it was mentioned during the open hour, the travel nurse program. There's discussions underway with that. The Nova Scotia Nurses Union President, Janet Hazelton, will be joining us on that program. Thanks to Vanessa Vandenez for everything that she does every day. She does a fantastic job behind the glass. And a big thank you to you, again, for taking time of your day to join the show. It wouldn't be very good talk radio if you didn't. Have a great day, everyone. And remember, be kind to one another.